She walked in with a black card, left with a billion-dollar empire trembling. No shouting, no drama, just one look, one sentence, and a quiet storm that exposed a system built on polished prejudice. This isn't just business, it's justice in heels. You'll want to see how it all unraveled. The main lobby of the Halcyon Crest Hotel at 4:12 p.m. was nearly silent, save for the steady click of high heels on marble. Autumn sunlight streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows, casting the silhouette of a black woman in a flawlessly tailored navy blue suit. Each of her steps struck the space with a rhythm no one dared to interrupt. Not because it was loud, but because it was the sound of authority that needed no explanation. Simone Ellis, 40, CEO of Meridian Capital Group, was no ordinary guest. Yet she made no gestures, needed no security, and gave no advance notice. All she carried were clear eyes, a folded fabric mask tucked neatly into her clutch, and a heavy black metal card that spoke for itself. She walked to the front desk. Behind it stood Bryce Langford, a white receptionist in his early 30s, brown slicked-back hair, champagne-colored tie. He looked up at the sound of her approach, his gaze flicking quickly from her red-soled Christian Louboutin heels to the lapel of her Armani jacket, and stopping on her skin. "Good afternoon, ma'am," he said mechanically. "How may I assist you?" Simone didn't shrug, didn't smile. She opened her phone and pulled up the confirmation email. "I have a reservation for the presidential suite. 3 nights. The name is Simone Ellis." Bryce's eyes wavered. He glanced down at the screen, then back up again. Not because he couldn't find the name, but because he didn't believe it. In those few seconds of silence, something in the air shifted. It wasn't a system error. It was bias. He gave a faint smile, not enough to be challenged, but enough for anyone who's ever been dismissed to feel it. "Oh, a Centura black card," he said as she placed the metal card on the glass counter. "Usually, these max out pretty easily." The words dropped like a drop of oil into a glass of white wine. No one said a word, but the atmosphere turned dense. A couple waiting to check in glanced over. Another staff member froze, mid-step, holding a stack of towels. Simone said nothing. She didn't smile. Her eyes were cold steel. Bryce had no idea, or worse, didn't bother to find out, that the woman before him orchestrated billion-dollar deals, that her signature could decide the fate of hundreds of hotel chains worldwide. And most critically, that she didn't need to raise her voice to bring down an empire. She slowly pulled the card back, as if retracting a chance. "I'll take my room," she said, voice calm and razor-sharp. And as she walked toward the elevator, the lobby felt noticeably colder. But there was one thing Bryce didn't realize. The game had just begun. And he had already lost it the moment he let that one careless line slip. Simone Ellis stepped into a standard suite on the 9th floor. The door closed behind her with a soft, weighted thud. The room wasn't bad, king-size bed, walnut furniture, and a respectable view over Midtown. But for someone who had just been outright denied access to the suite she had reserved, solely because of her skin color, everything in the room now carried the bitter aftertaste of polite, well-dressed insult. She walked to the desk near the window, set down her Chanel bag, and slipped the room key from her wallet. One quiet beat passed. Then she opened her laptop. The screen lit up with the logo of Meridian Capital Group. In the bottom right corner, Simone M. Ellis, Chief Executive Officer. None of the staff downstairs had known who she really was. And they didn't need to. Not until they made themselves accountable. On screen was the preliminary evaluation of Halcyon Crest Hospitality Group, the parent company operating the Halcyon Crest hotel chain. The report had been compiled by Meridian's internal audit team over the past 3 months. $2.9 billion. That was the projected value of what could be the largest investment deal of the year, one that would allow Halcyon Crest Hospitality Group to expand into new markets in Dubai, Tokyo, and Sao Paulo. And Simone was the one who would decide whether that deal went through. She clicked open the folder titled, Site Visit, New York. Surveillance footage, personnel reports, and anonymous testimonials from former staff came into view. Before this visit, she'd quietly dispatched a team to gather intel at 3 other Halcyon Crest properties. The results? Multiple reports of covert bias, especially toward black guests and immigrant staff. But today, in the company's flagship location, Halcyon Crest, Avalon, they had made the mistake of targeting her. Simone sat up straight, her gaze sharpening like a blade hidden in velvet. No need for outrage. No need for confrontation. Her role was simple: assess, verify, decide. She dialed her assistant. "Clara, I need updates from the audit teams in Chicago and Miami. Have a comparison brief ready before tomorrow afternoon's internal review. And send me the original contract framework with Halcyon Crest Hospitality Group." "Yes, Ms. Ellis. I've also received a note from legal regarding the corporate ethics clause. They're prepared to initiate the exclusion protocol if you give the word." Simone paused for a moment. She turned to the window, where the sun was beginning to slip behind Manhattan's jagged skyline. "Have it ready. But not yet. I want to test a few more service touchpoints. Let them show who they really are." When the call ended, Simone calmly lifted a glass of water from the minibar tray. The surface of the glass caught the city's twilight, tinged in hues of indigo and violet. She knew exactly what was happening. At this place, discrimination didn't arrive wearing crude words. It came dressed as subtle appraisals, raised eyebrows, forced smiles, unusual procedures. But this time, the person they chose to underestimate was the very one holding the future of the entire empire they served. Simone closed her eyes for a second, not out of sadness, but to focus. The game had begun, and she had no intention of losing. Starting the next morning, Simone Ellis shifted into silent observation mode, cool, clinical, precise. She was no longer the woman who had walked into the Halcyon Crest lobby in a sharp navy suit. Today, she wore a pale gray midi dress, a soft cardigan, and simple flats. All outward symbols of power were intentionally removed. At the breakfast lounge, when Simone presented her room key to access the VIP area reserved for diamond-tier guests, a young employee blocked her gently, eyes a mix of uncertainty and cool detachment. "Sorry, this section is only for VIP guests or those with the executive package." "I booked the executive package," Simone replied, handing over her keycard and confirmation email from her phone. The employee glanced briefly, then shook her head. "Must be a system error. Sorry for the inconvenience." Simone didn't argue. She simply took a photo, capturing the VIP access only sign, her room key, and a note she typed in. "Access denied despite confirmed reservation. Discrimination based not on system, but on face." That afternoon, she went to the hotel restaurant. She had a noon reservation for a windowside table. Arriving right on time, she approached the host stand. The hostess, a white woman in her 30s with blonde hair, barely looked up before saying, "Sorry, the window tables are reserved for regular guests. Would you mind sitting in the interior section?" Simone spotted at least 3 window tables still empty. She didn't react. She followed the waiter to a back corner seat, sat down quietly, and tapped the record function on the hidden camera embedded in the button of her blouse. She captured every word, every expression, every timestamp. Later that day, she tested the fitness center. Outside the gym stood a large, middle-aged security guard. When Simone handed over her key, he looked it over, flipping it back and forth like he was inspecting a counterfeit. "Gym's only open to guests with appointments today." "I called at 3:15 to reserve," Simone said, tilting her head. "No record in the system. You can try again later." At that exact moment, a white guest in workout gear approached. He didn't show a card, didn't speak, just nodded at the guard, and was let in without question. Simone turned away. Quietly. But her smartwatch had already recorded the entire exchange. Back in her room, she opened her laptop and began uploading the evidence, audio clips, images, and extracted video segments. Every action, every glance, every word was methodically logged under her evaluation chart. Nonverbal discrimination, implicit behavior, systemic failure. Beneath the evaluation chart, a red note stood out. Not an error, a choice. Simone checked the time. Less than 36 hours remained before her meeting with the Strategic Council of Meridian Capital Group. And she knew, when they asked why she declined the investment, She wouldn't have to say much. She'd simply present the truth through glances, tones, and the quiet, polished ways a system hides its prejudice behind elegance. The game had only just begun, but the score was already tipping in truth's favor. The next morning, the lobby of the Halcyon Crest Hotel buzzed with its usual rhythm, as if nothing had ever happened. But among the steady flow of guests, a single figure stepped through the doors, and time seemed to slow. Simone Ellis, clad in a black cashmere suit tailored to perfection, walked in without a handbag, without an assistant, without spectacle. All she carried was a presence that made the lobby still. She didn't approach the front desk. She didn't need to. Instead, she headed straight for the executive lounge, a restricted area reserved for top-tier investors and corporate delegates. A security officer stepped in to block her, following standard protocol. "Excuse me, ma'am, this area is..." Simone reached into her jacket pocket and held up a black business card, trimmed in silver, right at eye level. "Simone Ellis, Meridian Capital Group." The guard froze. In his earpiece, a voice from hotel management came through urgently. "Let her through. No questions. Level 39. Executive Boardroom. Halcyon Crest, Avalon." Outside, the sky was steel gray. Inside, the tension buzzed like a drum skin about to snap. 5 executives of the Halcyon Crest Hospitality Group sat at the table. On it, glasses of iced water and binders detailing the $2.9 billion investment deal had been neatly arranged. They had just received Meridian's internal report. Terminate all investment negotiations in North America, estimated loss, $2.9 billion. Simone Ellis entered at exactly 8 a.m. No assistant. No cluttered documents. Just a single black folder, and a gaze as direct as a blade. "Thank you for being here," she began, voice calm and composed. "I won't take much of your time." Bryce Langford, the original front desk agent, was now present in the room, summoned to support the logistics of the VIP event. When he saw Simone, the embarrassment on his face was unmistakable. Simone didn't look at him. She turned to Thomas DeWitt, Regional Director of Halcyon Crest. "Mr. DeWitt, I'm not here for apologies. I'm here to inform you. The discriminatory treatment that occurred at your flagship property was not the result of a single employee, but the reflection of a culture misaligned at its core." She placed a printed document onto the glass table. "Meridian is officially terminating its entire deal with Halcyon Crest Hospitality Group. Effective immediately." The air tightened like a pulled wire. We're conducting an internal investigation," DeWitt stammered. Perhaps this was an isolated. Simone tilted her head slightly, her gaze cold, sharp as steel. "No one spends nearly $500,000 just to test service, without good reason." She paused. "And no one walks away from a billion-dollar deal because of one front desk clerk. Let me be clear, the clerk isn't the issue. The issue is when a system allows looks like his to persist, then that system deserves to be dismantled." She placed a USB drive on the table, next to a nearly 40-page printed report. Document title, Service Conduct Audit Report, Halcyon Crest, Flagship Property. The boardroom fell utterly silent. "Over the past 48 hours, she continued, I experienced the operational procedures at Halcyon Crest Avalon under the identity of an anonymous VIP guest. The results not only led me to reject the investment, but forced me to question how this system is trained and managed." A public relations executive spoke up, forcing a polite smile. "Ms. Ellis, if there was a service error, I assure you we..." Simone cut him off, expression unchanged. "This was not an error. This is a pattern. Documented. Recorded in video, audio, and corroborated by statements from at least 7 frontline employees. It's all in this file." She glanced at the legal counsel across the table. "I trust you're aware that Meridian Capital Group has its own ESG compliance protocol, in which ethical conduct and equity are non-negotiable pillars of every investment." What was on the USB? Footage of Bryce Langford mocking a Centura black card. A restaurant hostess denying her a window table due to reservations, then seating another walk-in white guest at that very spot. A gym security guard asking for ID verification from her, but waving in a white guest without a single question. All of it captured with a button camera, professional audio recorder, and time-stamped activity logs. "We once called this a strategic investment," Simone said. "Not anymore. Not when your system assumes my skin tone defines my status. Not when I am evaluated as less than, simply because I don't match the image they expect of someone with a black card." The chief operating officer picked up the report. He began to read. Sweat began to bead on his temples. With all evidence laid bare, Simone stood. Her voice wasn't loud, but each word struck like a cold knock against glass. "Meridian Capital Group is terminating all negotiations with Halcyon Crest Hospitality Group. Effective immediately." Silence. Only the faint hum of the air conditioning remained. A finance executive at the far end of the table raised an eyebrow and muttered, loud enough for all to hear, "Do you realize what this will cost you?" Simone turned her head slowly. Her eyes held something sharp and unshakably calm. "I know exactly what it costs. But when you choose silence and dismiss every report of discrimination, then I have no choice but to speak for those you ignored." No one said a word. Simone removed the USB from her laptop and left behind the printed report, over 100 pages thick, on the table. "This is for you to keep. Not to analyze, but to remember." At that moment, from the far end of the room, someone who had remained still the entire time stepped toward the water tray. Bryce Langford, the front desk clerk who had made the mocking remark in the lobby 2 days ago. For internal reasons, he had been reassigned to assist during the board meeting. His hands trembled slightly, causing the glasses to clink against one another. Simone looked directly at Bryce, just for a moment. There was no hatred, only calm disappointment. And that, more than anything, made him unable to meet her eyes. He knew. One joke, one judgmental glance, one harmless assumption. And now, a $2.9 billion capital withdrawal. Plummeting stock value. A domino collapse he could never stop. As Simone exited the boardroom, the door closed softly behind her. But in the minds of several executives still seated at the table, another sound echoed. An alarm. Still, not everyone had the courage to face it. Shortly after Simone left, the head of communications turned quietly to the acting CEO. "We need to prepare a press statement." The man hesitated, then spoke quickly as if to reassure himself. "We'll call it a misunderstanding. A personal mishap between a guest and a staff member, not representative of the whole system." No one disagreed. No one nodded. Only Bryce remained frozen in the corner, pale-faced. For the first time in his life, he realized his arrogance had nowhere left to hide. And Simone Ellis, without shouting, without stepping onto a single news broadcast, had caused an empire to begin cracking from the inside. Simone stepped out of the room. Outside, the sky remained gray. But inside, everything was clear. No need to yell. No need to threaten. All it took was the truth, delivered at the right time, in the right way, to make an empire pay. That afternoon, before the media storm even had time to gather, 2 short videos unexpectedly surfaced on social media, nearly simultaneously. The first clip, under a minute long, came from a hidden camera in the hotel lobby. In it, Simone Ellis, dressed in a navy suit, placed her Centura black card on the front desk, calm and composed. Bryce Langford, the morning shift clerk, looked down at the card, then let out a smirking remark. "Oh, this kind usually maxes out pretty fast." No one raised their voice. There was no confrontation. But the tension between them was unmistakable. Anyone watching could feel it. This wasn't just a routine exchange. It was the moment that would start an unraveling. The second clip appeared right after. Just 45 seconds long. No background music. No narration. Just a clean shot of Simone Ellis, standing tall, unflinching as she terminated a $2.9 billion investment deal, face-to-face with the executive board of Halcyon Crest Hospitality Group. The video was sourced from the internal boardroom camera, recorded legally by Meridian's own legal team during that morning's executive meeting. Initially, it was archived strictly for internal documentation and to present to the investment committee as evidence. But when Halcyon Crest Hospitality Group began leaking vague statements to the press, claiming it was a misunderstanding between a guest and a staff member, Meridian struck back. They released a brief, unredacted cut, not revealing any confidential documents, just the unfiltered truth. And that truth alone was enough to set the internet on fire. The public didn't need commentary. They just needed to see it. A black woman, calm, unshaken, without raising her voice, wielding nothing but a business card and a measured tone, bringing a room full of hospitality power players to absolute stillness. Her face wasn't angry, but her eyes carried a depth of disappointment, something far more difficult to face than rage. Within the hour, both clips went viral. From Twitter to TikTok and across major news outlets. People began connecting the dots, the dismissive joke at the front desk and the billion-dollar termination inside the boardroom. Hashtags exploded across platforms. Hashtag Simone Ellis. Hashtag Censura Black. Hashtag NoHerNit dominated Twitter, LinkedIn, and Instagram. Comments sections poured in. This isn't just a CEO. This is a system being purged. I was once denied lounge access here because I didn't look upscale enough. Thank you, Simone. Quiet, precise, powerful. She just taught the entire industry a lesson in dignity. Others turned her final boardroom words into viral memes. We do not invest in places that build castles from contempt. People weren't just watching a clip. They saw a black woman, poised, composed, command a space that was never designed for her. And in her gaze, they saw themselves. The restraint, the silence, the familiar sting of being diminished. And the way she responded without fury, but with precision. A former front desk employee of Halcyon Crest shared the video with the caption, "I've seen this happen countless times. But this is the first time I've seen it exposed. Thank you." On CNN, a brand strategist was interviewed. This is no longer a story about customer service. It's a new symbol of silent power. How a woman doesn't need to raise her voice when the truth is already speaking for her. Within just 24 hours, the two video clips became more than content. They became a symbol, a declaration without shouting, a rebuttal both polite and uncompromising. And Simone Ellis, without a microphone, had made the world stop and listen. Meanwhile, at Meridian Capital Group's headquarters in Midtown Manhattan, the media department was inundated with hundreds of interview requests from around the globe. But Simone's private secretary responded with just one line. Mrs. Ellis is not giving interviews. Her actions have already said everything. On LinkedIn, Simone's profile gained over 30,000 new followers overnight. In the comments, young professionals wrote, "I applied to Meridian because I want to work for someone like her." Still, Simone remained silent. No press statements. No public appearances. But with every passing minute, her name spread, not through noise, but through sharp, unwavering composure. A power that couldn't be silenced. She didn't have to shout. The world was already listening. And under mounting pressure from the media and social networks, the entire Halcyon Crest hotel management system began to buckle. It started with waves of angry comments. Then came the flood of canceled reservations. But what truly kept the hotel's leadership awake at night wasn't Twitter. It was the phone calls from shareholders. The following morning, Bryce Langford, the front desk clerk who had made the mocking remark to Simone, was summoned to the HR director's office. He didn't exit through the main lobby as usual. 2 security personnel escorted him out through the staff stairwell. The termination was immediate. No internal memo. No farewell. Just one system notification. Employee account #E2991 deactivated. That same morning, on the 20th floor at the corporate offices of Halcyon Crest Hospitality Group, the parent company of the hotel chain, an emergency board meeting was called. Thomas DeWitt, regional director for North America, was placed on administrative leave pending internal investigation. Legal advisors warned that Meridian Capital Group might release a full report detailing Simone's experience. A move that could trigger litigation and damage the company's corporate ethics rating. By day's end, Halcyon Crest Hospitality Group's stock dropped 17% on the NYSE. A small figure in the market. but a devastating blow to brand trust. One of the group's strategic investors in Dubai issued a formal notice. They were pulling out of a $300 million expansion deal for Halcyon Crest's Middle East properties. Hours later, a major Japanese airline announced it would sever its luxury lodging partnership with Halcyon Crest, a move analysts called a premium supply chain disconnection. Meanwhile, in hospitality forums, former and current employees began sharing posts. Many confirmed that they had previously been instructed to tag certain guests with internal codes such as not core, HB, high burden, and even racially suggestive labels. Under the light of recent events, these codes became undeniable proof of systemic bias. Halcyon Crest didn't just lose a multi-million-dollar deal. They lost something no luxury brand can survive without trust. That evening, at a high-end restaurant in Soho, Simone was dining with a media partner. Her phone buzzed. A message from Meridian Capital's comms team. 6 p.m. market report, Halcyon Crest plummets. She set down her wine glass. There was no gloating in her eyes. Just the faintest smile. They should have checked my name before they judged me. Later, during a live broadcast covering Meridian Capital's Leadership Summit, a host asked Simone, "How do you feel about being called the woman who sparked a revolution in the service industry?" Caught off guard and unable to deflect, Simone simply smiled, her gaze cold, calm, and clear. And with just a few words, she ended the conversation. "I didn't spark anything. I just didn't stay silent." Her reply became a quote, one that would go on to define a new kind of resistance. Quiet, but impossible to ignore. And by now, public discourse was no longer focused on a single hotel. The question had evolved into something deeper. A conversation about dignity, justice, and who truly deserves premium service. Not by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. Less than 2 weeks after the Simone Ellis videos went viral, before the public could catch its breath, a press release from Continental Heights Group, one of the top 3 global hospitality conglomerates, made headlines. "We are officially adopting a new customer evaluation and staff training framework based on the Ellis Standard, a set of protocols inspired by the incident at Halcyon Crest." The term Ellis Standard first appeared on their homepage at exactly 8:03 a.m. Avalon City time. Within 4 hours, hospitality groups in Switzerland, Singapore, Canada, and France announced similar reform efforts. But these weren't just corporate PR gestures. They signaled a shift in mindset. Major hotel groups rolled out sweeping policy changes. Blind hiring, names, photos, gender, and nationality of applicants hidden during the first screening stage. A bias simulation training, mandatory VR scenarios where staff interact with guests of varying races, social statuses, and styles, teaching them how to respond consciously. 24/7 anonymous hotline, open to both employees and guests to report any instance of discrimination without revealing their identity. Even more striking, an independent audit firm, Raven Ethics and Compliance, announced the launch of a new service. The Hospitality Equity Index, a sweeping service equality audit, to be implemented across 300 high-end hotels in the US. And the surprise? Meridian Capital Group, where Simone serves as CEO, would fund the entire program for its first 3 years. A global webinar titled, "Beyond Luxury, Redefining Respect," was hosted for over 6,000 senior leaders in the hospitality industry. And who better to open the event than Simone Ellis herself? But true to form, no fiery speeches, no dramatic declarations. Just one sentence. Luxury doesn't live in the price of a room. It lives in how a person is seen when they step into the lobby. In the Q&A beneath her talk, a hospitality student typed in a question. "Ms. Ellis, do you think someone like me can change an entire industry?" Simone smiled gently and nodded. "You don't have to change the whole industry. Just change the mindset of one person, the first face behind the front desk you meet." That response began to circulate widely, quickly becoming a new slogan. Start with the first look. As the Ellis Standard spread across nearly 30 countries, Simone Ellis became the most searched name on global news platforms. They called her the woman who shook the hospitality industry with a single look. Publishers rushed in with book deals. The top 3 business magazines fought to put her on their covers with the headline, "The most powerful woman in silence." But none of them got a yes. The communications office at Meridian Capital Group had to repeatedly issue the same statement. Ms. Simone Ellis is not accepting interviews. No further comment. No public appearances. Simone didn't respond to talk show invitations. Didn't reply to handwritten letters from women's associations. Didn't post on LinkedIn. Didn't attend awards ceremonies. At her office on the 37th floor of Meridian's Chicago headquarters, she still arrived every morning at 7:30 a.m. Still wore dark suits. Still used the same unsweetened coffee mug beside her old 17-inch monitor. The only difference? Now, there was a black and white photo in a frame near her desk. Her grandmother, who was once denied service at a Mississippi hotel in 1961 simply for being African American. Simone had once told a colleague, "I don't need to be the center. I just want to be the starting point." And that's exactly what she became. For her, victory was never in the spotlight. It was in the hundreds of hotels reevaluating their internal policies. In the tourism management student who dared to begin her internship without bowing her head. In front desk glances that stopped questioning and began learning respect. This wasn't just her story. It belonged to millions who had once been seen through, as if they didn't exist. So Simone chose to step back, to let the light shine where it truly needed to. 2 months after the $2.9 billion deal was terminated, the global hospitality industry entered an unprecedented reform period. Thousands of front desk agents, managers, and coordinators were enrolled in new training, recognizing and responding to unconscious bias. Some called it the Ellis effect. But to Simone, it was simply the right thing to do. One afternoon, a young assistant asked her at the office, "Was it worth it?" That everything changed just because of one sentence. Simone smiled, sipped her black coffee. "Yes, because if we don't stand our ground, some people will believe they have the right to knock us down forever." Outside the 37th floor window, the city moved on as usual. But inside the heart of an entire industry, something had shifted. Quietly, deliberately, without a single scream. All it took was one person standing tall.